Revenge films.
My name is Damien. I live together with my wife, Emma, and our daughter, Emily. I was living an ordinary life raising our daughter like how most families do. However, as our daughter grew up more and more each day, something kept bothering me, and I kept thinking about it 24/7. That something was the fact that our daughter didn't look like me at all. We didn't have any similar physical features. I didn't want to doubt my wife at all, but no matter how I tried to convince myself that I was just imagining things, the reality was that our daughter didn't look like me at all. I worried and worried and worried even more, so I secretly took a DNA test to clear my doubts once and for all. The results stated that the possibility of Emily and me as parent and child was infinitesimally low. My mind suddenly went blank, and I didn't know what was happening to me. The very first thing that came to mind was that my wife might be cheating on me. That's the only reason that I could think of at the time. My wife and I had been living together since before we got married. However, no matter how much I thought about it, I didn't think my wife had the time to betray me. Where could she possibly get the time to do that? I thought. When she was still working in a company, she always came straight home, and even after she resigned from her previous job and started becoming a full-time housewife, she always picked up the phone promptly whenever I called her, no matter what time of the day it was. So there was no way that my wife had time to do that. When I thought about all that, I couldn't believe that my wife would have the time to cheat on me, or even have an affair for that matter. But how could this possibly be? Why did my daughter not look anything like me? However, according to the medical professionals and the DNA test results, it was proven that Emily was not my daughter. I had no idea what to do, so I thought I was going to be bald from stress. But whatever the truth was, I knew that I needed to know and face the truth. So I put on a brave face and decided to ask my wife about it. It was Saturday the next day, so it was my day off. My wife suggested that we go out together as a family and have some fun, but I told her that there was something serious that I needed to talk to her about. Emma probably noticed that I wasn't showing my usual attitude, so she silently sat on the chair and waited for me to speak. I then started talking about how our daughter didn't look like me at all, and I also told her how I worried and worried and worried even more, so I secretly took a DNA test to clear my doubts, once and for all. The results stated that the possibility of Emily and me as parent and child was infinitesimally low. My wife was even more shocked that our daughter was not my child, instead of being defensive for being suspected of having an affair. The way she was shocked was very unusual. I realized that my wife didn't have an affair, or anything close to that.
Is that really the result of that DNA test? Are you 100% sure that the DNA test is accurate?
Yes, I went to a trustworthy institution, so I'm sure of it. But looking at your reaction, I can tell that you didn't betray me. I'll ask this question just to make sure, but you didn't betray me, right?
Of course! I would never do such a thing. I never even thought of that, even once. If you don't believe me, let's go to that medical facility together and let's get a DNA test together. I can't believe that Emily is not our real daughter. I carried her in my belly for 9 months and I went through a lot giving birth to her. If she's not our daughter, whose daughter is she?
That's what my wife told me, and I thought that she was right. I knew for certain DNA test results were accurate. But if that was the case, whose daughter was Emily? My wife and I discussed different possible scenarios. We thought that there might have been a mix-up at the hospital, but then my wife said,
I will take a DNA test too, because this was a mistake by the hospital. Emily might not be related to us by blood. If you think about it this way, if Emily is not your daughter, then there's a high probability, too, that she's not my daughter either.
You're right about that. I guess we should both take DNA tests to make sure. A happy home turned upside down. My wife also took a DNA test. We were very schooled when the results came in. It turns out that Emily wasn't Emma's daughter either. We expected that to be the result, because it was the only possible scenario that made sense. However, when she saw the results with her own 2 eyes, she was so shocked that she collapsed on the floor and cried. We were now faced with another set of important questions. Where was our real daughter? And whose daughter was Emily, really? Where were her real parents? When my wife and I found out that our daughter was not our real daughter, we asked around for possible explanations. The first place we went to ask was the hospital where my wife gave birth to our child. The doctor told us that it was not possible for them to mix up the babies. Of course, they properly checked as well, but unfortunately for us, it wasn't the hospital's mistake. But if that's the case, when and where did we get separated from our child? My wife and I were worn out because of this mysterious disappearance. On the other hand, we were afraid that Emily, our daughter who we previously raised together for 4 years, might be forcefully taken back by her birth parents. We didn't think we could return her to her real parents. I was so afraid to know the truth of the situation, but I was also very worried that our real child might be in danger. When I thought about the possibilities that our daughter might be in, I was worried so sick that I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. We talked to our parents and our relatives about the situation. When I asked for their help, despite thinking that they ought to judge me, our efforts were not meaningless because we learned a shocking truth that led us to the answer of our daughter's disappearance. To cut to the chase, we learned that the culprit of the disappearance of our child was my cousin Veronica. Veronica gave birth to her baby half a year before my wife gave birth to our baby. However, my wife at that time wasn't doing well after giving birth to our baby. She needed to stay in bed for some time, so she had to stay at the hospital for about half a year. Both my parents were working, so I couldn't ask my mother to help me with raising my daughter. Then my cousin Veronica, who was living near our house, volunteered to take care of our daughter while I was at work. Honestly speaking, I was very busy at that time with work and managing the household, so I was pretty exhausted all the time. I was clearly in need of some help. That's why I decided to take her help, and I made sure that I paid her properly for her help. I didn't know it at that time, but my cousin apparently replaced my child with hers. My aunt knew about what Veronica did, but she was worried that if she revealed what her daughter did, she was afraid that the cops might arrest her daughter. That's why she thought that if my wife and I didn't realize what her daughter did to our child, there was no need for her to tell us. I was furious from the bottom of my heart for what my aunt did, or I guess I could say, for what she didn't do, which was reported to us about the misdeeds of her daughter, but more importantly, I wanted to talk with my cousin. However, the nightmarish situation didn't end there. According to my aunt, she hadn't been in contact with her daughter for years now. That's why she told us that she didn't know how our real daughter was doing now. Any inkling of hope disappeared from my mind, and all I saw was darkness. Of course, I was filled with despair and rage. I wanted to blame my cousin and aunt for what happened. But first and foremost, I wanted to know and make sure that our real daughter was still alive and well. My wife and I then continued to search for our real daughter, with the help of every agency that we could rely on. Not long after we started looking for her, we found my cousin living in a different state. When my wife and I went to my cousin's new residence, my wife was so filled with rage that she lost herself for a second, and she grabbed my cousin with such strength that I didn't know she had. Mothers truly are very protective when it comes to their children. I somehow managed to calm my wife down. I then asked my cousin where our real daughter was, and also to enlighten us about why she swapped our daughter for her daughter. Apparently, my cousin had epilepsy, and because of that, she had to take medicine for her illness. My cousin shared that at that time. She took the medication according to the doctor's instructions. One of her friends told her that since she was taking medication, she might give birth to a child with defects. As her child was born and grew up, she was afraid that she might be told one day that her daughter had a disability. That's why her genius plan was to exchange her daughter for our daughter, because they looked quite alike in her eyes. Even I was going crazy because of my cousin's very selfish reasons. However, my cousin was the only person who knew where our real daughter was. That's why I endured the situation like swallowing a needle. Then, when I asked my cousin about our daughter's whereabouts, she told us that when she got divorced from her ex-husband, since the child was not her real daughter, she didn't want to raise her anymore. So as a result, she called her ex-husband to take our real daughter with him. My wife couldn't take it anymore and started grabbing my cousin by the arm again. but I calmed her down by saying that we should prioritize looking for our daughter right now. We could deal with my cousin later. Then, after contacting my cousin's ex-husband, Mr. Johnson, we learned that he didn't realize that our daughters were swapped. Now that we knew everything that happened, we searched for my cousin's ex-husband and contacted him. When I told him everything we discovered, Mr. Johnson told us that he also had been thinking about how his daughter didn't look like him at all. No similar features whatsoever. So we immediately set up a date to meet together with our daughters. Then the day we would meet our real daughter finally came. My wife and I brought with us the daughter that we raised, while Mr. Johnson brought with him our real daughter, who he raised. When I saw her, I could tell that our real daughter was raised very preciously. When we saw our grown daughter for the first time in forever, we embraced her, and we couldn't hold back our tears. But to our real daughter, we were strangers, so she ran to Mr. Johnson and clung to him.
Go away! I'm scared!
It was sad to hear those words, but I understood where she was coming from. But my wife and I were very happy to see our daughter alive and well. Seeing his real daughter, who looked like him, Mr. Johnson couldn't hold back his tears either. He then looked at us and said, "Thank you very much! Thank you so much!" All the parents cried tears of joy, while the children were confused about the adults shedding tears. We all shared the joy and happiness of reuniting with our family. After that, we exchanged our contacts, and we met up every month to keep updated on each other's daughters. We also had sleepovers for our children, so that our kids would interact with each other more. On the other hand, my wife and I, together with my cousin's ex-husband, sued my cousin and my aunt for what they did to our families. My cousin argued, saying,
"No one is unhappy as a result, so there's no need for this. Why am I the villain here? I just swapped them. What's the problem with that? They look alike anyway. You can't tell 10 differences."
She strongly interjected, and I couldn't see any signs of remorse or reflection for her actions. However, she not only ruined the lives of the children, but she also changed our lives, including that of her ex-husband. As a result, my cousin was found guilty and charged a huge amount of alimony, an amount so huge that she wouldn't be able to pay it off even if she worked her whole life. As for my aunt, the rest of the family and extended family cut off relations with her. She also became excluded from receiving inheritance of property from my grandparents. As a result, my cousin ended up going back to her hometown. She's carefully monitored by her family, while she works day and night to pay off the huge amount of alimony. From now on, my cousin will probably only continue living to pay off her debts. It's almost like a miracle that our daughter, who was swapped, is happily living in a safe and comfortable environment, thanks to my cousin's ex-husband's proper care. As for my cousin, who made an unforgivable misdeed, we plan on making her pay for the rest of her life.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.